All right, and the topics we're going to explore this morning, the Constitutional Court ruling on former President Jacob Zuma, and then Deputy President Paul Mashatile dominating the news cycle for the wrong reasons, and then the torching of trucks around the country. Joining me for this conversation is Scrolla Africa's editor, that's Zukile Majova, and the editor at Fleetwatch, that's Patrick O'Reilly. Gentlemen, to both of you, thank you very much for your time. Zukile, let me start with you, reflecting on the decision of the Constitutional Court, saying that the matter around former President Jacob Zuma being released on medical parole, that was wrong, and therefore the Correctional Services Department must determine whether or not he does go back to jail, and if so, for how long. The president of the Veterans League in the ANC saying to me a little earlier, he calls for calm because if the former president does go back to prison, therefore it is part of the consequence management for what he has done. How do you think this is going to be digested throughout the country?
Xoli, I think we find ourselves in an interesting time, It's very important for everyone to say that the law applies to everybody, so this is quite an interesting ruling. And unfortunately, I think as everyone would have seen, it comes at a time when everyone is worried about what is happening on the roads. To have a ruling like this, obviously political, is nothing to do with the courts, but it does set the ground fertile for once again to have something like July riots. Then the big question becomes, are the police ready? So that really is the context of it.
Patrick, let's bring you into the conversation because we're going to try and weave this into what we are seeing now, which is the torching of the trucks. The context here, and even though the police minister was at pains this week to say there is no relationship between what is happening now to what occurred in July of 2021. In other words, there is no connection. There is worry, though, on the streets in KZN. Our reporter was telling us that business people there are saying they are still recovering from that unrest which we saw 2 years ago. Your thoughts on what perhaps has prompted this latest action of the torching of the trucks?
Really, the general feeling in the industry and amongst private security is that it's not related. And, the Concord decision came after the trucks have been burnt. So unless someone had an insight into the Concord, I don't think that would have been a factor. However, the worry is that, is this political? There are a number of reasons. You've got service delivery protests all over the country. You've got ATDF, which is the foreign driver issue. You've got another one is the political destabilization of the country. These are all theories, because no facts are out yet. In terms of it being a precursor to what we saw on the KZN unrest, the general feeling, and really it's not qualified, the general feeling is that it's not related. There are other issues at stake with the truck attacks. But what they are, we still don't know yet.
Zukile, let's come back to you. The President, Cyril Ramaphosa, said at the time, describing what occurred in July of 2021, that this was a failed insurrection. And right now, I think he was asked at an event yesterday, and he said he is absolutely comfortable. He's not worried that we might revert to what we saw in July of 2021. Do you think that we should take the president at his word when these torchings have affected, I think, if my math is correct here, some 21 trucks possibly have been burnt, not just in Mpumalanga, KwaZulu-Natal as well. We also told that parts of Limpopo, there were torchings there as well. Can we really take the president at his word when he says law enforcement is on alert?
Xoli, what we are not talking about, which we should be talking about, is the issue of the fact that It's not the people of South Africa in general that wants to sabotage the economy or sabotage the government of Cyril Ramaphosa. This whole thing about people who don't like Cyril Ramaphosa comes from within the ANC, and it then flows into society. The issue of whether the two are related or not, you've been a journalist for many years. You know a protest can start as a protest for water and ends up becoming a protest for all sorts of things. Just the word service delivery tends to cover just about everything, you know. People are not specific and say, we are toy-toying because we want water. Now, on the issue of how far this can go, generally, one would understand that there is now a blueprint. There have been examples where there's been this kind of riots, and the army was deployed very, very late, which is what made it worse in July 2021. But also now, there is now a blueprint where you are able to release the state security agencies very quickly within short notice, as we saw with the national shutdown of the EFF, which was effectively dealt by the state security agencies, including the army. One would assume at a time like this, when it's quite clear. I'm even shocked that 21 trucks burned down and we still haven't seen some serious response from the state security agencies. But there have been examples in the past. There is a blueprint on how to deal with these riots and deal with them. It's just a question of whether the decision, Mr. Slow decision maker Cyril Ramaphosa, will make the decision in good time to stop this or actually make sure that it doesn't happen at all. Otherwise, the blueprint is there, the plan is there, it has been proven to work. It should work this time around as well.
Really, may I ask Zukile what?
Patrick, I want to, can I quickly prompt the question to you? I know you're probably itching to respond to what Zukile has just said, but what makes me laugh is that he refers to the president as Mr. Slow Decision Maker. One of his cabinet ministers, Mr. Nxesi, was at pains here yesterday to say it is not labor issues that have resuscitated the torching of the trucks on our roads, because remember, he was central to this matter just last year in June when there was that interministerial committee to deal with this matter. He says by the end of this year, at least there should be clear legislation as to what needs to happen in the trucking sector. Do you believe him?
That's why I'm laughing. By the end of this year. Come on, Mr. Minister. This has been going on since 2018. It's not new, and no definitive information, intelligence has been pushed out. This is not new. There have been numerous task force formed since 2018 in Majova. And there, Minister Cele was there. Minister, at that time, by the way, it wasn't Minister Zukile, Mr. Fixit, and now we have a new transport minister. It was Blade Nyamnazani who was the Minister of Transport. And Minister of Labour was there at that first one. They've had numerous task forces all over the year, and there's nothing that has come out. We have no definitive knowledge. Who is this? We all suffered. What's that big word? Zukile, come, you good with the words there. Supposition. We're all guessing. No, by the end of this year. We must have it fixed by the end of next week, because you've been dealing with it since 2018. Is it political? Is it foreign drivers? There have been instances where it is definitely foreign driver issues. There's destabilization. There's, as Zukile says, there's faction fighting within the ANC. Do people want to get rid of Cyril? There's a threat. And it's all violent. It's tremendously violent. And the trucking industry is an easy target. But normally people, when you go burn things, it's like a local service delivery protest. We soon know they haven't had electricity for 3 weeks. They haven't had water, so you know the reason. Hell, and very often I'd be leading those protests if I didn't have water for 3 weeks. It's all about non-delivery of government. And what we need is definitive answers that will bring this blinking stuff to an end. The transport industry is under siege, not only from attacks, but from numerous inputs. Hijacking has gone up, etc., etc., etc. So he said by the end of the year, well, I'm going to hold all my thumbs, because, let's see, there'd been no action, there'd been no definitive outcomes since 2018.
Yeah, and gentlemen, I want to wrap the conversation with another subject matter that has dominated headlines, and it surrounds the Deputy President, Paul Mashatile. I suspect every citizen in South Africa has a view about whether or not we ought to take the leadership of our country at face value when they say that they are anti-corruption. The Deputy President, mired in controversy because he is said to be hanging out with unsavory characters, people who are going through the criminal justice system. Edwin Sodi is one person perhaps to mention, whom the Deputy President says, Zukile, he has a personal relationship with, even though he has not interacted with him since occupying the Deputy President role. Should we take the ANC-led government at their word when they say they are conducting what is called a renewal, which embedded in it has to do with disassociating with individuals who could be involved in corruption?
Only you have this renewal project happening in the ANC, but it's happening at the pace of the ANC. It's not happening at the pace that we want as a country. It's not happening broadly in the interest of the country. It's happening in the interest of the ANC. I mean, in this particular case, very similar to the case of Mashatile. From day one, you knew that this thing was not going to come to a good end. I mean, you can't have someone with so much baggage, being made secretary of the organization. In this particular case, even before Paul Mashatile became deputy president, there were issues dating back many, many years. Obviously, those skeletons are going to start coming out. I didn't expect them to come out this early. I mean, he should have been quite strict with these guys and say, look, there is a whole attention on me and the things that I'm doing. Don't go around beating people on the highways. Obviously, you can't go around saying we are friends with the likes of Edwin Sodi, who are involved in the water projects in Tshwane, and we can see an outbreak of cholera. I mean, unbelievable. In 2023, we're treating cholera in South Africa, a disease that was beaten 100 years ago. Again, decision-making, I keep saying this thing, decision-making. Make decisions quickly, implement them quickly, and it goes all the way to the top. This issue of Paul Mashatile, when it grinds, and slowly it will grind, but it's going to end very much like the same situation of Ace Mashatile.
Patrick, the Democratic Alliance is worried, and they are talking about state capture 2.0. Are you perhaps thinking along the same lines that we might possibly face another round of state capture here? Or is the Democratic Alliance simply being alarmist?
I think that the confidence of the South African public in the government, in the ANC, has been eroded, not through emotions, but through their actions. And so, do we think there's going to be another state capture? The possibility is very real, and most people around the dinner table, the ordinary South African man in the street, around the dinner table, around the braais, around wherever, they've lost faith in an honest government. And that's judged on their actions, not on emotions. It just goes on and on and on. And yeah, show us the yellow uniforms. Show us some action. And then we can stop speculating on whether there's going to be another round of state capture, whether there's going to be more corruption. South Africa lives under a blanket of corruption. And leadership, I once read, is an activity, not a position. And we're not seeing the activity in the interests of South Africa. We're seeing the activity in the interests of a few who are in power positions.
Yeah. And Zukile, perhaps you get to have the last word, because Patrick touches on something there, and that is that we have not seen people in orange overalls, basically people being taken to jail, and in particular, high-profile individuals, since the state capture report was released a couple of years ago now. And I'm struggling, Zukile, to understand when the president is going to say that he is anti-corruption and he is for ethical leadership. Right now, the biggest controversy has to do with one of the departments in his administration that did not follow the law. And it has to do with the former president being released on medical parole by a correctional services commissioner who defied a decision of medical experts and released the former president anyway. Now that matter has come back. And yet, we had a very clear statement, Zukile, if you remember. We had a very clear statement outside of the Escort Correctional Services from the Minister of Justice and Correctional Services, and that is that the former president will not be given preferential treatment. Is there a difference really between the administration of former President Jacob Zuma versus this one?
Only we don't see much difference. I mean, the issue of state capture was dealt at a very high level. If you go to every small town in all the provinces, there is a mafia, a group of thugs who call themselves Business Forum, and that in KwaZulu-Natal has come out as now the construction mafia. I mean, 60 billion rand lost every year now to this construction mafia, really a group of thugs, like I was saying. I saw it happening in my town here in Umzimvubu. I mean, poor as we are. You've got business for people who call themselves Business Forum, and all of them come from the ANC background. So state capture continues here non-stop, and municipal officials are being intimidated to give chunks of money, 30%, to people who haven't done the job. You can imagine something like that. Now, I find it quite interesting, Xoli. Every time ANC people, especially these last few months, go to China, they keep going to China to emulate what the Communist Party is doing there. One thing they are not coping in China is that Xi Jinping has prosecuted more than 1 million people, for corruption since he came in, and most of them, his comrades, and the ANC is not learning from that situation. Our state capture reporter just sitting there gathering dust, no one is being prosecuted. We should have learned from that. Broadly, there is still not much difference between the Zuma regime and the Ramaphosa regime, especially as far as fighting corruption is concerned.
Zukile Majova, let me thank you very much for your time, and let me also thank the editor at Fleetwatch, Patrick O'Leary. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for wrapping up the week for us, and that's it from us this week.